What would you do in this position? This is another lesson on tactics and calculation, why it's so important in chess. Think about this position. We're going to start from the beginning of the game and get back to it. And I'm going to show you my opponent's idea and why it didn't work. Anyway, let's start from the top. My opponent plays the Sicilian. Looks like it's going into the dragon. D6 usually kind of like tells that the person's going to play the dragon here. So I'm expecting moves like G6, Bishop G7, and I'm going to castle queenside. He doesn't play that. He plays like E6 instead and Bishop E7. So it's another way to play it, which is totally fine. And here we have a typical Sicilian defense position where white castles queenside, black castles kingside. We have kings on opposite sides of the board of each other. So the basic strategy is to rush the pawns at the enemy king and try to break open your opponent's defenses, which I start doing. So you'll notice I have an attack here. I'm going to play H5 and G5. I'll never play G5 first because then my opponent, let's say I play G5 at some point. Let's say we have this. My opponent gets actually a blockade here, and that's very tough to defend. So I always play H5 first. Therefore, let's say after I play G5, he can't play this because my rook's there. And what happens here is after G5, something like this, then the knight would be stuck in this position, but even not, I would have moves like to open up the H file. So anyway, after G4, my opponent plays knight C5. I go on with H5. I'm not worrying about what my opponent's doing on this side of the board. I just worry about what I want to do on my side of the board. He takes, I take back with the A pawn. That's the best way to take. You can take back with the knight. The problem is, and why I didn't do it is, again, if you understand what the nature of this position is, which isn't hard, basically it's kings, like I said, on opposite sides of the board from each other, and you understand the principle that behind it is the attack is very important. So often chess is about what's more important, not necessarily how much basics or principles you remembered, but knowing them and knowing what's most important. In this position, it's more about the attack, and the tempo of the game is most important. If I play knight here to B3, he's going to eventually get a tempo on my knight, let's say, and that tempo could prove to be fatal. Now, look, he attacks another one, and all of a sudden his pawns are advancing. So because of that, if I take with the pawn, he cannot get a tempo on my knight. So that's why I took with the pawn. That's why it's the best way to take back. Now, on my side of the board, I'm playing for G6, and then H takes G6, opening up the H file, because I want files open to my opponent's king. Here I go. I play G6. He plays C5. I take, and I play Queen G2. Okay, my opponent's improving his position and sending his pieces towards my king. That's a good idea. Here I actually had a mouse slip. I meant to play Rook G1 here, which would be okay. And this is not a bad move. It's just there's no point to it because I wanted to play Rook G1. But anyway, my opponent played B4. I moved back. My opponent here does something, and here's where the game starts. Here's where the point of the video really starts. Calculation in chess. Why is it so important? My opponent's 1900, over 1900. He's a strong player, and he has pretty good tactics. He has, strong calculation skills. But you can never not improve on your calculation skills. None of us are computers. We can always improve on them, and they drastically affect our chess rating, how deeply we can calculate and recognize tactics. So my opponent plays this, which looks like a bad move on the surface. It is, but hold on. It gives me the F5 square for my knight. So right then and there, I was happy. Now, why would my opponent, who's a strong player, give me such a good square for my knight? Well, because he saw that this clears the way for a tactic. He can play now takes. Before, he couldn't do it. In other words, if he played let's say he played this now, I could take back with the knight. So he moved my knight. He was concerned about that. And now he plays knight takes b3. So he wins a pawn. That was doubled and really wasn't doing anything, but he won a pawn. Okay. I immediately recognize it as a mistake. That's more of an intuition thing. That's not really for this video, but I realize it's a mistake. But I have a tempo on his knight now because I'm attacking it now. I have a great knight over here, and I'm wondering what his point was at this point, because he has to move his knight back to like c5, and then after something like rook d1, I'm going to start attacking his backwards pawn, And if he like tries to defend it or something, you know, I'm going to start to get a break in the center, and I'm going to start to attack, and I have a good game. So anyway, his idea was e5, which is a really bad idea. But let's see what it is. Let's see what he was going for. So I just take the knight. So this is another thing why you have to be good at calculation, because you don't want to. You never want to be in a position where you're winning, but your opponent bluffs you, and you fold under his bluff, right? So a lot of players might say, "Oh, I don't want to take the knight. A strong player is offering me a knight. I'm not going to do it. I'll take this instead." And then all of a sudden, your opponent's winning, because now, you know, if you take now bishop e6. Bishop e6 here, kicking out the knight. After the knight leaves, we have queen d3 winning the bishop. This is really tough stuff. However, if you just calculate and try to see, you know, as deep as possible, which is you get that to that level by working on tactics puzzles, and then playing a lot of chess games, you'll see here you can just take the knight. Now, my opponent's point was he takes the pawn, and I can just take back. Now, when I take back, now you'll see I'm defending the pawn here, and my rook's defending my knight. My opponent played queen d3. Now, my opponent's point was, it looks like you might be thinking he can take the bishop, but he can't because my knight's here. And he can't really take this knight because my queen's here. So you might be saying, what's his point? So after queen a2, his point was bishop takes e4. And now you might be saying, okay, I get it now. He's attacking the queen. He's attacking the knight twice. After I move my queen, let's say, he's going to win the knight back. And even if I try to defend the knight, let's say like this, he just wins the knight back. And then after I take back, he gets the bishop, and he has a good game, right? Actually, he would still be in trouble there, but that's what you might be thinking, or he might have been thinking. However, here I had to see in advance, if he played this variation, what I would do, and you have to see all your opportunities too and your forcing moves. So pause your videos again. This is where the video started, and try to see what I played here. Always look for your forcing moves. Here, the reason why his whole move doesn't work is because of a critical tactic, queen takes e4, and that just totally disrupts this whole idea. And this is what I played, and my opponent resigned, because after takes, I have check. Always be mindful of the forking squares for your knight, because they help, they'll help you spot tactics. And that's why the knight shouldn't be, well, it should be on f5, but he should not have let my knight on f5 because it's such a strong piece. And after the king moves, I would just take the queen, be clearly up a piece, and that wins the game. Anyway, hopefully you found that video helpful. If you did, check out this one, and I'll catch you guys next time. Go play some chess.